binabati na may ngiti sa aking mga labi. Naghahanap ba kayo ng makakatuwang sa pagre-review ng inyong anak? Meron yan sa DepEd. Ang ETUlay online tutorial ay libre at handog ng ating kagawaran sa pangunguna ng OUA ICTS EdTech. Ito ay isang proyektong makatutulong sa mga mag-aaral, katuwang ang mga magulang o kasama sa kani-kanilang tahanan para masagutan at maunawaan ang mga modules. Hangad din ng programang ETUlay ang matulungan ang ating mga guro sa kanilang mga blended learning classes. Ang ating ETUlay ay mula kinder hanggang senior high school. Bukod sa academics, meron din tayong mga special programs gaya ng All is Wellness, Reading and Math Remediation, Storytelling, Mommy Tech Talks, Classes sa Gramatika, Speech Class, Financial Literacy, at marami pang iba. Pinalawig din ng ETUlay ang ating Alive program para sa mga mag-aaral mula grade 1 hanggang grade 3. Gayun din ay mayroon tayong ALS program at SPED tutorials na makasisigurong makakamit ng lahat ang inclusive education. May SPED hotline na rin para sa inyong mga katanungan patungkol sa special education. Kaya, subaybayan mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, mula 9:00 ng umaga hanggang 7:00 ng gabi ang ating ETUlay. Sa ating pagtutulungan, maiaangat natin ang bawat isa. Ating itutulay ang pagkatuto upang di mapigil ang pag-aaral ng kabataang Pilipino. Itulay natin ito, sulong edukalidad.
Mabuhay! Good day to all! I am your tutor Madge. Welcome to ETUlay, a free online tutorial, an initiative of the Department of Education, Information and Communications Technology Service, Educational Technology Unit, ICTS EdTech. This program is aimed at helping and assisting learners from kindergarten, senior high school, ALS, Alive, and SPED learners. Aside from answering the modules, the ETUlay is offering programs which you will surely look forward to. Together with our parents and teachers, the ETUlay will bridge the gaps where difficulty and ease meet in learning new knowledge and skills. So, let us prepare our modules, pen and paper. Ready your mind to see and hear worthwhile and interesting lessons. Let us now study and learn, together with our volunteer online tutors. Tara na!
Ayan! Isang magandang buhay sa ating lahat. I hope naririnig ako ng ating mga ETUlay tuties at ngayon ay Wednesday na naman, Miyerkules at tuwing 11 to 12 noon ay magsama-sama tayo sa ating ETUlay SACSEED, ETUlay sessions on Acing, Civil Service Examination, Education. At ngayon ay nasa week 6 na nga tayo. At by the way, ako nga palang inyong tutor Ron. Kung naaalala ninyo, ako po ang isa sa mga inyong nakasama noong week 1 and 2 para po sa ating ETUlay SACSEED Mathematics or Numerical Reasoning session. At ngayong week 6, di ba? Naaalala nyo pa ba yung mga sessions natin? Week 1, 2, 3, and 4. Meron tayong sessions in Numerical Reasoning and Introduction to Civil Service Examination. Noong week 5, noong nakarang linggos, ang nakasama natin ay ang ating program head for Senior High School Filipino para sa Verbal Reasoning Filipino. At ngayong araw na ito, no, syempre, hindi namin kayo bibitinin. Kung nakaraang linggo ay Filipino, ang ating sariling wika. Ngayon naman ay asignaturang English or Verbal Reasoning English naman ang isi-share sa atin ng ating very first timer tutor ngayong araw na ito. Ayan, so isang napakalaking karangalan sa akin na introduce ang ating guest tutor for ETUlay SACSEED Verbal Reasoning English, a new part of our ETUlay SACSEED family and our ETUlay online tutorial or shall I say free, no? Free online tutorial for each and everyone. My dear co-teacher and of course my dear friend, let us all welcome to share verbal reasoning English on how to ace civil service examination, Miss Pamela Perino Solomon. Hello, ma'am. Good
Hello. Okay.
morning. Magandang
Good
umaga.
morning, everyone. It's an honor to be part of this program, to be in front of you today, and I am so glad to be part of your week 6 online tutoring in DepEd ETUlay. Okay. So thank you very much, Tutor Rob.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Meron tayong 25 million viewers ngayon. Kaya hindi na natin ito patatagalin pa. Pataas pa ng pataas ang ating mga viewers. I will now give the floor to you, ma'am. Thank you. Enjoy po
Alright.
and God bless. See you later ulit,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes, all right. So thank you very much once again. Okay. So today we're gonna talk about verbal reasoning in English. So last week, no, week 5, we you had an encounter with verbal reasoning Filipino. So this time we're gonna talk about the verbal reasoning in English. So let me just share the objective. A very uh, short objective. We only have 2 objectives today. That is to learn. Ayan. So medyo nag-lag siya. Okay. Ayan. Learn key concepts of verbal reasoning. Okay. So we're gonna talk about, we're going to cover the key concepts of what is verbal reasoning, okay, types of verbal reasoning, the usual questions, and okay, this is very important. This is the usual questions that you will encounter in verbal reasoning. And then we're going to have practice questions. And of course, the most important here is that tips and tricks, okay, on how to solve questions, okay, in verbal reasoning. And of course, number 2, all right, so to answer the reading activities on verbal reasoning. So let's start with the usual questions, the frequently asked questions. Of course, where we talk about verbal reasoning, right? Without further ado, let us start now with identifying what exactly is a verbal reasoning test. So, ano ba ang mini-measure nito? What is the test trying to measure? So, what is a verbal reasoning test? So, a verbal reasoning test actually reveal how well you can analyze written information. This is given to you, candidates, okay, or applicants, to assess your ability to understand what you read, okay, and think constructively and reach accurate conclusions. So if you notice, no, verbal reasoning is always a part of the aptitude test. So this program is really for acing the civil service exam, but you could also use the tips that we're gonna share here later on in other aptitude exams, okay? Para do sa mga mag-entrance exams, okay? In different companies. Then you could also use the knowledge that we're gonna share here in the online DepEd tutorial, okay? All right, so what is verbal reasoning? So it's a type of problem solving that requires the test takers to select a sentence out of the 4 options which best completes the passage. So basically, you're gonna have a reading comprehension test here, wherein you will have to read the passage and then select from the 4, sometimes 5 nga, okay, options that the best answer that is taken from the passage. Okay, so verbal reasoning tests assess your ability to read and understand text, which is really important skill. Verbal reasoning tests are used in educational assessment. That's why in every test you will always encounter verbal reasoning because it's really an aptitude test that would test your communication skill. Okay, so how does verbal reasoning work? Okay, so just like what I mentioned a while ago, the verbal reasoning test basically is a reading comprehension test. Okay, now this is given to any applicant, okay, or any candidate so that the company, or particularly here, civil service, you're applying for a government job here, okay, so that they will have an additional insight on what expected work level of the contestant. So it gives the employer a more accurate image of what the contestant, I mean, the ability of the contestant more than what is written in the curriculum vitae or in the resume and the job interview. So a verbal reasoning test works by presenting you with several passages, which will be followed by questions. So later on, no, in our exercise, in our practice, we're gonna read some passage, and then you will be given for options. You will be given questions which has something to do with the passage. Okay, dahil nga reading comprehension test ito, what are the required skills, okay, that you need to improve, okay, in a reading comprehension test? One, the ability to recall facts and figures at short notice. Remember that this is a timed test. You are reading these passages under time pressure. So, bakit nga ba gano? Bakit nilagyan ng time, ano? Because we would like to test the ability, how fast, you could recall facts and figures at a very short time. This verbal reasoning test, okay, would also a measure would also see would like to measure also your good comprehension skills. Why? Because you need to be able to read between the lines when presented with questions, problems. So logic then sinusukat niya logic. So it measures your logic. And then the third one is it measures how quickly you can decipher information. Just like the first one, the ability to recall facts and figures at a short notice. So here, this test would also like to measure how quickly you can decipher information efficiently to arrive at an answer that makes sense within a given time frame. Okay. All right. So let's have some tips. Before we proceed to the practices that we have that I have prepared for you here, let's have some tips muna and tricks in acing your verbal reasoning test. So very basic. Okay. The first one, of course, as I always say, practice is essential, not optional. If you are taking any test, there is always a preparation. So practice, practice, and practice. No other uh, tips could be given aside from this one. Of course, you have to practice some more to ace your assessment and aptitude. There are materials that are available which you could use to practice on your verbal reasoning. Now we also have number two. So why is it important that you scan the entire test first? Hindi agad babasahin agad-agad ang passage. Of course, the first thing that you need to do is to scan the entire test. It is very important that you do not read immediately the passage. Okay, make sure you look over the entire test. Why? Because you have to see how many reading tests are there in that particular test. So you have to find out how many passages that you need to read. Okay, and you also have to look into the number of questions associated in this passage. It is very important that you scan the reading test first, okay? So that you could also divide the time. Remember, in a reading comprehension test or in a verbal reasoning test, we have the 1 question, 1 minute rule. Okay? So most likely it's 20 item question, reading comprehension questions, and there are only 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes time yan, okay? And so you have to follow the 1 minute 1 question rule. So you really have to budget your time. So for you to be able to divide your time, scan the entire test first. Okay? So these exams are usually timed. Always remember that one. So you need to make sure you have a particular time for each question to complete everything. The third one is, of course, you have to focus on the question. So, ito yung number 3 tips natin. Focus on the question. So, what do you mean by that one? It may sound, counterintuitive. Okay? But in a reading comprehension test, since verbal reasoning is a reading comprehension test, the best thing to do is to look into the questions first before you read the passage, because sometimes the usual practice that we have is we immediately read the passage, okay, without even looking at the questions first. So scan the questions first very quickly lang, you have to read the questions first before the passage, so that, okay, you can check out the question. Why checking out the question will allow you to develop an understanding of what you should be looking into. May mga questions so that you have an idea already, of what to look into in the passage. Okay? Kasi when you look into the question and then read the passage, na-encounter mo na yung question, okay? And you know that this passage was asked, okay, in that particular item. So this makes it easier for you to find the information that you need to pick out from the correct answer. Okay, so you should always ensure that you're looking for a potential answer, specifically, answers that have the best solution. That's why it's very important that you focus on the question. Next is, of course, use the passage. That's the next tip that we have. So what do we mean by use the passage? Some reading comprehension tests, okay, will ask you to find definition of the passage. Okay, we'll ask you to uh, find an inferencing, or we will ask you to infer from a particular passage. Now, when you are focused on the passage, you can use other strategies such as context clues, okay, finding the main idea. So this will be faster than isa-isahin mo, ang passage, or main sentence in the passage. So check the beginning and the end of the passage. That's very important. And see if any idea seems to repeat. Okay, so this is probably the main point of the piece. So you have to focus and use the passage. And of course, next is that you have to work with your answer. What do we mean by working with your answer? So there are answers that are usually wrong and can be dismissed. So ito yung tinatawag nating the process of elimination. You're not likely to find the right answer in something humorous. So kapag ito lang yung tips, if the answer would include always or never, then most likely, correct yun. Okay, so answers that include the term always, okay, or never are also unlikely to be correct. Now, there are also options, yung mga choices that have multiple answers, yung parang nirephrase lang, okay? So most probably it's wrong. It's a wrong choice. Okay, so you may also find questions with multiple answers that seems almost the same. So only restated a different term. So these are probably wrong. So you have to, of course, work with your answer. And then number 6, since again, I would like to emphasize that verbal reasoning is a reading comprehension test, learn and practice reading comprehension strategies. So we have a lot of reading comprehension strategies, the skimming, the scanning. These are all examples, making inferences. Okay, this would also go back to number 1, which is practice. Because if you prepare by exposing yourself to different reading assessment tests, then mas madali. It's easier for you to infer. Okay, it's easier for you to apply reading comprehension, such as analyzing and interpreting literature, okay, the skimming and the scanning. So, mas madali sa'yo yung if you are familiar with this strategy. So, there you go. Number only 6 that I can share with you with the tips and tricks in acing your verbal reasoning. Let's have an example. Okay, so this is just a short passage. Okay, so let's read the passage shown here. All right, so there are no effective boundaries when it comes to pollutants. Studies have shown that toxic insecticides that have been banned in many countries are riding the wind from countries where they remain legal. Compounds such as DDT and toxaphene have been found in remote places like the Yukon and other Arctic regions. This paragraph best supports a statement that if you're going to apply the tips that we had a while ago, which in you look into the questions first, I mean the options first, and that's A, B, C, D, okay? The question here is that this paragraph best supports the statement that, meaning the question here, the paragraphs here would require you to infer, okay, or to come up with a generalization from the paragraph that is given. So if you look into the options here, there are four options. First, letter A, toxic insecticides such as DDT have not been banned throughout the world. B. More pollutants find their way into polar climates than they do into warmer areas. C. Studies have proven that many countries have ignored their own anti-pollutant laws. And D. DDT and toxaphene are the two most toxic insecticides in the world. Now, if you're going to look into it, which of the four, no, ano sa apat, okay? Yung aalisin mo agad. You're going to eliminate first. Okay? So, let's look into that. Ayan. So, take a look at this clues, okay, from the paragraph that could lead you to the answer. Ano sa tingin ninyo yung sagot? What do you think is the answer? Letter D, okay, DDT and toxaphene are the most toxic insecticide in the world. It does not actually mention, no? Directly mentioned in the paragraph. So most likely, ito yung una niyong tatanggalin. This is the first that you're going to eliminate. Okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. All right. Next, letter B. More pollutants find their way into polar climates than they do into warmer areas. Some of you might consider this one because of the because it was mentioned here that countries are riding when it comes to pollutants. Studies have shown that toxic insecticides have been banned in many countries are riding the wind from countries where they remain legal. So siguro if you're going to look at letter B, dahil merong Arctic region, and you could infer, no, that Arctic region are cold regions, okay? So, you might answer letter B, but it does not make sense. So, you will remove letter B. So, you will end up choosing between letter A and letter C. But take a look at the clues. The first line mentioned there are no effective boundaries, which would tell you as a reader, which you could infer, no, that there are no limitation. When you say no effective boundaries, no limitation. Okay? And then there's another clue, the line from countries where they remain legal. And then I encircled the line, the phrase riding the wind. What do we mean by riding the wind? Riding the wind, if you're not going to look into it in a dictionary, if you're going to infer from how you understand, from how it is used in the paragraph, riding the wind here in the sentence would suggest transferring or moving. Okay? So, is it A? So that would end up with only two options. That's letter A, toxic insecticides such as DDT have not been banned throughout the world, or letter C. Studies have proven that many countries have ignored their own anti-pollutant laws. But if you're going to look at the sentence here in the paragraph, the studies have shown that toxic insecticides have been banned in many countries are riding the wind. So the answer here is what? What do you think is the answer? Is it A or C? You are correct. So your answer is good as mine. So the answer here is letter A. Why letter A? Because it is directly said here and not letter C. Okay? So, hindi naman sinabi na studies have proven that many countries have ignored their anti-pollutants. But rather, the clues here would lead you to letter A, which is toxic insecticides such as DDT have not been banned throughout the world kasi nga from one country nakapag-transfer pa to another countries where they remain legal. So there are still countries that use toxic insecticide. So yun lang, okay? So you're going to look into the process of eliminating from the four options, and you could do that by, of course, understanding, giving clues, getting clues rather from the paragraph that is presented. Let's have another practice. Okay, so let's have the paragraph here, very short lang. So 60 years ago, I know everything. Now I know nothing. Education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. Now, of course, before you read the passage, this is just a very short passage. You have to look into the statement first. I mean, the question first. So, sabi ng question, the sentence best support the statement. So, just like the first one, you are going to identify here. You are asked to come up with generalization from the passage that is given. Okay? One, letter A. The older we get, the more we forget that we have learned. Okay? The older we get, the more knowledgeable we become. That's letter B. Okay. Letter C, the more we learn, the more we realize that there's more we need to know. Or letter D, okay, I forgot to move the one. We learn more as we grow old. And letter E, ignorance is a lifelong process. Okay, let's have the analysis here. All right, take a look at the line. What do you think does the line 60 years ago, I know everything would suggest? So if you're going to look at it, A, B, C, D, E, there are 5 options. What will be the first one that you will eliminate? Okay, letter E, definitely. Okay, it doesn't make any sense because ignorance is a lifelong experience now. Okay, so the use of the word ignorance is found in the passage, but if you're going to look at it, it doesn't make any sense because it's the education that should be a lifelong process, not ignorance. Okay, all right. If you're going to look at the encircled words rather, yung progressive discovery and own ignorance, these are juxtaposed statement. When you say juxtapose, yung opposing statement, because progressive discovery tapos it was written beside ignorance. Okay, so there is a juxtaposed position. Kaya nga, 'di ba? It would remind us to this line that says, to know is to know that you know nothing. That is the true meaning of knowledge. 'Di ba? Do you remember that line? So, what is the answer? Okay, is it B, the older we get, the more knowledgeable we become? That would be an opposing. Opposite siya dun sa sinasabi kasi tingnan nyo, 60 years ago, I know everything. Now, I know nothing. So, it's not letter B. So, eliminate letter B. Okay? So, it's just between letter A and letter C. How about letter D? We learn more as we grow old. Look at the sentence nga. 60 years ago, I know everything. Now, I know nothing. So, it doesn't make any sense in letter D that we learn more as we grow old. Kasi it would be the opposite from the statement, 60 years ago, I know everything. Now, I know nothing. So, you would only need to have letter A and letter C. Okay, so the older we get, the more we forget that we have learned. And the more we learn, the more we realize that there's more we need to know. So what do you think is the answer? Is it A or C? Yung pinaka malapit sa sagot. The older we get, the more we forget that we have learned. The more we learn, the more we realize that there's more we need to know. So, A or C? So the answer here is letter C. Yun na nga yung sinasabi ko kanina, no? Okay, 60 years ago, I know everything. Now, I know nothing. So, the more we learn, the more we realize there's more we need to know. Kasi, di ba, to know is to know that you know nothing. Okay, medyo confusing ito, di ba? You could also answer letter A kasi sinabi, the older we get, the more we forget that we have learned. Okay. All right. Now, how do verbal reasoning tests work? So what are the skills that are required? Usually, in a verbal reasoning test, okay, you would encounter 3 questions or these 3 questions that would measure your verbal critical reasoning and your reading comprehension. So let's have an example here and then let's try to identify what does the test wants to measure. Is it verbal critical reasoning or yung reading comprehension. Okay? So, let's have this example. Alternative investments have become increasingly popular. Oh, take a look at the questions. The passage suggests that it is safer to spread your saving across a range of different investments. So this will require you to agree, disagree, okay, and cannot say. So this is a verbal critical reasoning test. So tatlo lang ang option yan. So you just have to read it fast, okay? And then you just have to answer true ba, false ba, or cannot say. So what is the answer? So alternative investments have become increasingly popular in the last decade as investors seek a safe haven from highly volatile equities and the unpredictable property market. During this time, alternative investments such as art and stamps have outperformed traditional investment by around 60%. High net worth individuals, in particular, are scrambling to diversify their portfolios in order to mitigate risks and preserve their capitals. So, while alternative investment can produce higher returns, they have significant downsides. Fake presents a major problem for potential investors as fraudsters flood the market with replicas. This is a particular issue with popular artists such as Picasso, who produced thousands of pieces of art. Furthermore, art can be expensive to buy and sell, with auctioneers typically taking around 6% of the sale value in fees. Finally, valuable pieces need to be insured and protected. The most valuable artwork are often stored in banks' vault and secure art storage facilities, with the owner rarely getting to enjoy the piece. So, since you have particularly read naman na the questions, then it's easy for you to look into the answer. Okay? So sa tingin ninyo, ano ang pinakatamang sagot? Is it true? Okay? Is it false? Or cannot say? What is the answer? Okay. All right, so very good. So, the answer here is true. Bakit true? Take a look at the third sentence. Okay? The third sentence explains that the very rich have been diversifying their portfolios to reduce the risk of sudden changes in share prices. And so, therefore, this would suggest, okay, that the statement that the passage suggests that it is safer to spread your saving across a range of different investments. So, it's true. Okay, so since nabasa na ninyo yung question, it's easier for you to answer because you know already na true, false, and cannot say lang naman ang hinihingi ng questions. Let's have another example here. Okay, now take a look at the question. This is what we call the verbal, okay, critical reasoning test. So what is this verbal critical reasoning test? This test, okay, your ability to apply logic by confirming whether a given statement is verified by the text. This will really require you to really read the passage kasi this will test your logic. Iko-confirm ng question kung talagang nabasa ninyo yung passage. So, this is a test of logic whether a given statement is verified by the text provided. So, this is a verbal reasoning exam. Okay, let's have another example here. So, let's look at the question first. If more tourists come to this country, it will mean there. Meaning, you need to read the entire passage because there is a reading comprehension test. Okay, this would test how you understand the passage. All right, let's read the passage. Despite what many believe for years, there are strong links between the success restaurants and the travel and tourist industry in this country. This link is biggest in the fine dining sector. There is also a link in the fast food and casual restaurant sectors, but less so. The recent increase we have seen in the quantities of tourists visiting the country has led to higher sales in fine dining restaurants. Many now believe there is more our government can do to encourage tourists to visit this country by promoting us as an international tourist destination. It will translate into more business for hotels, retailers, and restaurants. Just think of the new jobs this will generate. What do you think is the answer? Okay, what is the answer? Is it A, B, C, or D? Okay, so the answer here is the second paragraph, which the answer can be found in the second paragraph. Take a look at the second paragraph, which talk about the fact that if more tourists are encouraged to come in the country, it will translate into more business for hotels, and this will result to more jobs. And so, if you're going to look at the options here, letter C is most exact answer, which is to create more jobs in many hotels. So this makes letter C the correct response. Now, look at the type of question. This is a reading comprehension type of questions. What is a reading comprehension type of questions? This will measure, or this will assess your ability to digest written information and then use the information provided to answer the question quickly and accurate. Okay, so the most common form, okay, of verbal critical test a while ago is the true, false, cannot say test. Okay, for the verbal reasoning, you might also encounter this type of multiple choice. No, there is the explicit multiple type of questions. No, here you are going to answer to questions which is explicitly stated in the text, just like the one that we had. Okay, so nandun na siya mismo sa text. So example of these questions is who said or how many. So it's easy, okay? Madali siya makita because it's explicitly written in the passage. We also have, okay, the type of multiple choice that have implicit multiple choice. What do you mean by implicit multiple choice? So these are the questions that will require you to infer. Kaya nga, very important yung inferencing skills ito. When you say inferencing, you come up with your own understanding. So, this is the type of questions that will explicitly stated but can be inferred from details. Okay? So, this is how you use context clues. Okay? So, dito na yun, yung predicting outcome, generalization. These are skills that are needed for you to be able to answer the implicit multiple type of question. For a good example of that one is yung what made the employee decide? Okay, that's what caused the issue to. So these are all examples of implicit, meaning you are required to infer from what is stated. It's not directly stated. You have to understand it based from the clues given, okay, in the passage. We also have what we call the meta multiple choice. So what is this meta multiple choice naman? Here, the answer does not refer to details specifically given in the text. Okay, but it would require the test taker, the candidate, to answer broader questions such as what can we conclude, okay, or which statement would weaken the argument. Now, this would really require you to understand the passage. Ito yung kumukuha ng oras actually eh. If this kind of questions, di ba, there are times na we have to reread the passage because the questions would really require us to come up with like predicting outcome, generalizations, would really require us to reread. So this would really take time. Okay, so don't afraid to skip questions, by the way, ha. If you think that the question requires a lot of time, skip na muna natin, no? And let's finish all the easier questions. And then balikan na lang natin yung difficult questions, okay? That would require us to really focus on the passage, to really intensively understand the passage. Okay, we also have type of test that would require you to have grammar and spelling check. Okay, let's have this one example. And we also have questions that would require you to have the vocabulary and analogy. Ayan. Which of the following would best replace the word understanding in sentence 3? So, kapag nabasa mo na yan, you don't need to really read the entire, no? Nasaan si outstanding in sentence 3? Okay? So, ayan, no? Babasahin natin. Let's look at it. So, we can find it here. Some will ask lots of questions and some will want to chat. So, ito yung sentence 3. It is up to you to know how to handle them and to provide them all with outstanding levels of customer service. To do so will require empathy, patience, and consistency. So, these are the choices. We have the A, remaining, B, superb, C, multiple, and D, supportive. So, what do you think? Of course, if you're familiar already of the word outstanding, you know very well that the answer, okay, is letter B. Outstanding, the word outstanding, you know, that is used in the sentence number 3 suggests that customer service has to be really great. Okay, so the answer would lead you to option B, which is superb. So superb is the best word to replace outstanding in this case. So here, there is the word analogy. Bakit word analogy? Word analogy and vocabulary. So sometimes, if you read a passage, kapag binrowse yung passage, okay, nakita niyo may mga highlighted, okay, word already. So given na yun, alam niyo na itatanong yun. Kasi why is it highlighted in the first place if this will not be asked? So, word analogy questions such as this one would test your ability to find the relationship between a pair of words. Okay, and it could also be considered as a vocabulary test. No, later on in the practice we have this one. So kapag naka bold ang letter in the passage or naka italicize, you know very well that this word will be asked as part of the vocabulary test. So, vocabulary test, this testing the range of your vocabulary and your ability to identify correctly how ideas are related. So, usually, ito yun, synonyms, antonyms, okay, these are the words which have the same or opposite meaning to another. And then you would also encounter questions that would, I mentioned that this one already, that would have to do with grammar and spelling. Okay, so you have this type of test would check your knowledge of correct spelling and grammar. So this might be included in questions such as find a new word, okay, or word swap. For more on those, check out the other practice tests, okay, that you could have. Kasi the more you expose yourself to these different types of materials, the more you know the grammar rules or the vocabulary type of test, okay, the word analogy. Okay, so how best to prepare for a verbal reasoning test? Paano nga ba tayo magpe-prepare? Okay, the best way, okay, to prepare yourself for a verbal reasoning test, okay, is to make sure you are familiar with the format and have done plenty of practice before you sit on the test. Let's face that one. I've mentioned that one many times, okay? You really have to expose yourself with the different materials. Practice questions will help you identify your weaknesses and develop your own methods for success. Makakagawa ka ng sarili mong strategies, okay? And practice could also help you, okay, become more efficient pagdating sa mga time test. No, you could also measure how long can you finish a test, okay, or how quickly can you finish a particular test. So you really have to practice. So if you'd like to have more practice online, then there are downloadable materials that you could have for the verbal reasoning test. So during your practice, you have to make note of your most common mistakes. Saan ka ba nahihirapan? So, in what aspect do you find difficulty? Kasi if you keep on practicing, okay, you would know in what skill do you want to, you can focus on, or you have always committed mistakes. Okay? So, vocabulary ba? Sometimes kasi it's really the vocabulary, that have difficult. Kasi pagdating sa inferencing naman, really, it's easier. Okay? But as for the vocabulary, And it would really require you to read a lot kasi okay? So, during your practice test, make a note of your most common mistake or the aspect you struggle most with. And then focus your improving your performance in these areas. And make sure that you practice the test under time condition. Okay? So I think all of us, lahat ng mga nakapag-board exam or nakapag-aptitude test and would really encounter this one when you have review sessions, you really have also to time yourself. Okay? And make sure that you practice under time pressure because speed as well, accuracy will be crucial when it comes to the real test. Okay? So kapag sanay ka na, if you really get used to answering under time pressure, if it's a real test already, pag doon na mismo sa civil service exam, then it would be easier for you, okay? So, try to really practice uh, using time test, okay? So, try to really look into that aspect. Okay, so let's have the reading comprehension tricks. Okay, so let's go to this one. So, dahil nga verbal reasoning is a reading comprehension text, there are some tricks, okay, when it comes to reading comprehension that might help you, okay, focus, that might help you make the best options, make best answer in this test, okay? First one, so this is the very common questions that we encounter in a review session. So how can they improve their reading comprehension? Okay, these are 11 tips that I could give you. First one, okay, so while ensuring that you strike a balance area, okay, it is on this area, it is really important that you keep a number of things in mind and ensure that you do not fall in the common pitfall. Kaya nga, I mentioned a while ago, it's very important that you practice kasi you'll be able to understand in what aspect you find you always committed mistakes. Okay? So, anong klaseng exam ba yung lagi ka nagkakamali? And then you could focus on that one. Okay, the first one is, of course, as you can see there, do not overemphasize trivialities. What do we mean by that one? So, details are important. We know that one. But don't be obsessed with examples or illustration and so on. Kasi kakain niya ng oras ninyo eh. You just have to get a hang of the main point and not the examples. Okay, remember that comprehending the overall flow and structure will help you analyze and answer the question. So please focus on the main point, okay? So meron kasi mga supporting details in the passage that would require pa time, pero it's not really important naman in the question. So kaya nga it's very important that you have to look into the question first para alam mo kung ano yung focus na hanapin mo sa passage. Okay, number 2, do not memorize. There's really no need for you to memorize every word present in the passage. It will always take time. Remember niyo yung 1 minute, 1 question rule, ha? Okay? So, practice that one. Kailangan within 1 minute, you are able to answer the question. So, you do not need to memorize every word present in the passage. Just understanding the flow, structure, and the main point of the passage should be your priority. Lagi yan, the question naman is always on the main point. So for the factual or specific point question, you can always reread the passage. Okay? Pero doon na lang doon sa, for example, if the question would ask you passage 2 or second paragraph passage, alright? Or the third paragraph in the passage, doon ka na lang pupunta. You do not need to reread the entire passage because that would take time. Okay? So, number 3, do not read the passage first. This is what I mentioned already a while ago. So, always go through the question first and then the passage. Why? Because this will prepare you, okay, to focus on the things you need to look into the passage. Okay? So, focus only on the questions and not on a particular answer options. This will give you a quick overview of the question. Number 4, Do not overemphasize on vocabulary skills for reading comprehension. Having a strong vocabulary is great. However, okay, meron talaga mga questions na mahirap, such as Shakespearean vocabulary na hindi natin na-encounter sa tanang buhay natin, ano? So, this will help you, this will really prevent you from understanding the passage. So, do not put yourself so stressed with this one. Okay, pwede naman nating balikan yan, ano? So, what are you going to do? Just make sure that you understand how is the word used in the sentence. Dito papasok si context clue. Napaka-powerful ni context clue, ano? If you do not know the meaning of the word, you just have to look into how it is used in the sentence, in the paragraph and in the sentence. Okay? So that's how you could understand how the word used in the sentence, and eventually could help us lead to the answer. So number 5, do not spend time on reading comprehension that you cannot comprehend at first. So, there are times that we come across with, eto na nga yung sinabi ko a while ago, no? There are times that we come across with a passage that we're not able to comprehend. Napakahirap talaga, no? And it's really struggling with one passage on the exam. So, unahin na muna natin yung mga madadali, okay? Focus on the ones that you can easily manage, okay? And then you go back to the tricky passages, yung mahihirap talaga. And yun naman, ano, okay? If that would require you to reread the passage, iwan mo na yung passage na yan, balikan na lang. That's it, okay? And then, of course, if you still have time, make sure that you really answer the passage. So, kung wala na talagang time, no, just focus on the question and create an intelligent, educated guess. Pinakamalapit, the one that really makes sense. Okay, wag tayo basta-basta manghuhula ng sagot because this is reading comprehension. Number 7, do not rely on trigger words. What do you mean by trigger word? You might get trapped, okay, in the web of triggered words. So if you don't read attentively through the passage, there are triggered words, yung mga supporting details lang. Okay? So a passage may focus on one point for quite a bit of a sentence and then change it towards the end of trigger words. So like yung mga conjunctions such as but, however. So this will usually confuse the reader. Okay? So do not rely on trigger word. Really understand and read the passage. Number 8, this is this will really take time. While you're reading, you really have to take notes katulad ng ginawa natin, ano, we underline yung mga ideas a while ago that could help us lead to the conclusion, to the answer. Number 9, try to preempt questions. So this is really difficult skill, okay, preempting questions. But if you can master this, you will surely be the king of the reading comprehension. While you read the passage, try to identify the possible questions that could be asked. Pero kung nabasa mo na yung question and you're familiar with the question, it's easier for you to be able to identify. Kasi, ito tinanong na to. Okay, part to ng question a while ago. So, I could take note of this one. So, number 10, opening and closing paragraph requires extra focus. Yes. Questions such as the main idea are based on the overall subject of the passage. And majority of the time, the answers for these questions lies in the first and the last paragraph. So you have to really give an extra attention to the first paragraph, yung topic sentence, okay? And also how the sentence ends, because that's usually would tell us about the main idea of that paragraph. And number 11, constantly question yourself while reading the passage. So you really need to focus, okay? Try to give attention to the passage by asking yourself, okay? So in order for you to maintain the concentration while reading, so make sure lang, okay, that some basic questions keep playing at the back of your mind. Okay, pero pag na-distract ka na, no, okay, so there are factors that could lead you, that could distract you, then you will always go back to the question and then it will take time, paulit-ulit, okay? So what is the author's main point? Why is the author writing this? Okay, these are the common questions that you could keep playing in your mind while you read the passage. Okay, how has the author chose to convey his main point? How has the author organized his materials? Okay, so these are questions that could help you identify the main point. So you just constantly read the question. So you just really have to focus. Okay, let's have an example. Siguro we only have one last example here. So, ayan, look at the paragraph. Meron bold na letter, which is paradox. Okay? So, this would tell you, tatanong to. Kasi definitely, hindi naman yan naka-bold. The inequanimity, okay? Equanimity, rather. That's written in bold, so that would definitely be asked. Okay, so let's go to the questions. Which of the following would be the most appropriate title of the passage? So, okay, from the question itself, you know na this will be require you to read the passage. Kasi you will not be able to answer this type of question if you won't read the passage. According to the passage of the person who is successful businessman and wealthy. Ayan, this would also require you to read the passage kasi may hirapan ka sagutin kung tanong na to if hindi mo babasahin. The phrase, lavish with hospitality, saan siya makikita? Lavish with hospitality ito. Okay? And the third sentence, a person who is wealthy is expected to lead a luxurious life and to be lavish with his hospitality. So it's in sentence 3. O, di ba? Alam mo na agad, okay? And of course, eto nga, the word paradox in the last sentence of the first paragraph means, ayan, okay? What is the meaning of the word equanimity? Ayan, okay. So this was asked by, this is a vocabulary test which would require you to understand the meaning and how the word is used in the sentence. Let's read it very quick na lang. A fact that draws our attention is that, according to his position in life, an extravagant man is either admired or loathed. A successful businessman does nothing to increase his popularity by being prudent with his money. And, okay, a person who is wealthy is expected to lead a luxurious life and to be lavish with his hospitality. If he is not so, he is considered mean, and his reputation in business may even suffer in consequence. A paradox remains that he had not been careful with his money in the first place. Okay, he was not careful daw with his money in the first place. He is lavish, diba? With a luxurious life. He would never have achieved his present wealth. Among the low-income group, a different set of values exists. The young clerk who makes his wife a present of a new dress when he has not paid his house rent is condemned as extravagant. Carefulness with money to the point of meanness is applauded as a virtue. Nothing in his life is considered more worthy than paying his bills. The ideal wife for such a man separates her housekeeping money into joyless little piles. So much for rent, for food, for the children's shoes. She is able to face the milkman with equanimity every month, satisfied with her economizing ways, and never knows the guilt of buying something she can't really afford. As for myself, I fall neither of these categories. If I have money to spare, I can be extravagant. But when, as is usually the case, I am hard up and then I am the meanest man imaginable. So what do you think is the passage all about? What do you think is the most appropriate answer here? A, being extravagant is always condemnable. B, the cause of poverty is extravagant. Does it say? C, extravagance is a part of the rich as well as the poor. And D, stinky habits of the poor. So letter D is not, doesn't make any sense. So we remove that one. Letter A is, it's not actually mentioned here. Doesn't make any sense as well. It's generalization of the passage. So more on opinion, okay? Letter B and letter C. So the most appropriate answer here is letter C. Why? This is the most appropriate title as the author shed lights of the life of the rich person, okay, in the first paragraph, and discusses the life of a person who belongs to lower part. Ayan, nandito yan. Okay. So, nag-compare siya, no? So, letter C, extravagance is part of the rich as well as the poor. Okay. According to the passage of the person who is successful businessman and wealthy, A, B, C, or D. Okay. So, makikita yan sa first paragraph. Okay? Nandito yan sa first paragraph. So, the answer here is letter A. A lavish man, a businessman and wealthy is expected to have lavish lifestyle. Okay, so nasa first paragraph yan. So kung na-encounter niyo kanina, di ba, we went to the question. So, as you see on the first paragraph pa lang, alam mo na yun yung sagot dito. So, it's letter A. Okay, number 3. The phrase lavish with his hospitality. So, ito yung kanina, okay? In the third sentence, in the first paragraph means, what could be the answer? Ayan, oh. Lavish with his hospitality. Nandito yan. A person who is wealthy is expected to lead a luxurious life and to be lavish with his hospitality. So hospitality would mean welcoming guests, right? Okay. So, what could be the answer? Ayan. Ayan, letter D. Extravagance in entertaining guests. Okay, this is a vocabulary test, paradox. Ayan, nakita natin yung kanina, naka-bold siya. The paradox remains that he had not been careful with his money in the first place, he would never have achieved his present wealth. So, from that sentence, what do you think the paradox would mean? What is the answer here? Babalikan natin ang meaning ng paradox. So, nakita ninyo naka-bold si paradox. So, definitely, it would be asked in the test. Okay, so the paradox, alam naman na natin ano. So the answer is letter B, a statement that seems contradictory. And the last one, this is the word equanimity. What do you mean by the word equanimity? Equanimity means being composed. Okay, the stability or composure. So, what would be the best answer? A, calmness. Calmness. B, the composure. C, equivocal. D, dubious. So, dubious, okay, is a negative term. So, it's not, okay? Discomposure is the antonyms. Equivocal is not also. So, it would lead us to letter A, which is calmness. So there you go po. These are examples of how you could ace your verbal reasoning test. So towards the end, let me just leave you with this one. So a strong verbal ability is more than just a tool, okay, to help you land your dream job. In this case, uh, you plan to ace the civil service exam with a high verbal ability score. So, a high verbal prowess guarantees a positive first impressions, okay? Showcasing you as professional equipped to effortlessly communicate in language that truly transmit your intention. Your verbal ability can be a real asset, whether you are in your dream job, interviewing for a new position, starting out a new relationship, or anywhere else in life. So I hope I was able to give you a very, though it may be quick, I was able to help you and give you some tips on how you could improve your verbal ability test. Thank you very much. Danielle?
Wow! Yes, Ma'am Fam, congratulations at sigurado no na maraming mga napulot ang ating mga taga-subaybay ngayong araw na ito no. Tutor Fam, shout out lang natin ang ating isa sa mga napaka-active na student dito. Student rin natin siya sa San Lorenzo Ruiz Senior High School, Mr. Rodel A. De Mesa of Grade 12 ABMO3. Maraming salamat. At syempre, nagpapahatid rin dito, Ma'am Fam, ng pasasalamat ang isa sa ating mga tagapanood ngayong araw na ito sa si Mr. Jomel S. Madrid. Ayan, sigurado yung mga tips na binigay ni Ma'am Fam ay siguradong magagamit po natin no, as we go through the process of taking the examination for the civil service. Ayan. So, ito yung mga Ma'am Fam, no, gusto mga maging kawani ng gobyerno. No? Kung gusto din yung
Yes,
maging
and good luck, no? Okay, good luck to them. Kasi kayang-kaya. Okay.
yes,
Practice
sigurado,
lang.
no, with the
Yes,
help
definitely.
of this free ETUlay tutorial session, no, sigurado na kayang-kaya na po nilang mapagtagumpayan ang ating civil service examination. Na I guess, kung ako nagkakamali, no, we'll be having the exam this coming April na po ata, Ma'am Fam, no? o April ang start ng pag-process ng mga documents and then June magkakaroon ng exam. Ayan. And of course, syempre, Ma'am Fam, with your dedication of your time and talent, no? And of course, treasure dahil kasama dyan ng internet connection, no? Damutan nyo na po ang ating munting handog po para sa inyo, ang ating certificate. Ayan. So, bago ang lahat, syempre, shout out po sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin, lahat ng mga nagbigay ng suporta for Ma'am Fam, Tutor Fam, and to the whole ETUlay SACSEED. Pa-shout out daw, Ma'am Fam. Mga students ba ito? 11 ICTB?
Mga
Ayan.
estudyante ko yan.
Oo nga. Ayan si Eliza Nicole B. Enolva, si Anton Pajo Carulio, at pa-shoutout daw sa 11 UMC. Ayan. Hello sa inyong lahat. And of course, in behalf of the ETUlay family, we'd like to award this certificate of recognition to Ma'am Pamela P. Solomon for sharing her invaluable knowledge as tutor during the 6th session in ETUlay SACSEED of the ETUlay online tutorial program conducted by the Information and Communications Technology Services Educational Technology Unit, ICTS EdTech, held on March 23, 2022, given this 23rd day of March 2022 via StreamYard, signed by our project lead of DepEd ETUlay and our principal, Mark Anthony F. Hamisal, the team leader for broadcast media and streaming, Mr. Salvador Iman Sala I, and the head of ICTS ETU, Mr. Mark Anthony CC. Muli po, Ma'am Fam, maraming salamat at see you ulit sa ating mga next endeavor. Ayan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all.
May mga shoutout ka pa dyan before tayo magtapos.
To all my students, ayan, Yumsi, salamat sa panonood. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes, at dito nga nagtatapos ang ating week 6 at sa susunod na linggo abangan natin kung sino naman ang bago, no, na mag-share ng kanyang knowledge in general knowledge of the civil service examination. Thank you once again, Ma'am Fam, and to all the viewers for today's ETUlay SACSEED 6th session. Magkita-kita po tayo muli sa susunod. Paalam!
Ang husay naman! Natapos mo ang iyong tutorial session kasama ang iyong mahusay na ETUlay tutor. May bago ka bang natutuhan? I-share na yan gamit ang hashtag ETUlay Level Up. Huwag aalis ha, dahil may susunod pang programa na pwede mo ring panoorin at salihan. Dahil naghihintay na ang iyong mga tutors. Happy learning dito sa ETUlay!